I think we had a wonderful keynote speech by former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. Now we start our second session. Our speaker for second session is Mr. Dale Johnson, Director of Adaptive Learning Initiative at Arizona State University. And he has also been playing a key role in designing and implementing the Vietnam high-touch, high-tech prototype project with the Education Commission. So Director Dale Johnson, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lee. I'm going to share my slides. Thank you very much to tvchosun for inviting me to participate. And I look forward to a good conversation with all of the panelists as we explore the future of educational technology and the changes that are occurring. I think you can you see this picture in my screen? I'm trying to minimize that. Okay, we'll have to work around that. So I want to talk today about the change in the educational technology, and as part of this process, I'm the Director of Innovation at the University Design Institute at Arizona State University, and my experience has been with the development of the high-touch, high-tech process, as Dr. Lee was describing before. This was the process that we used in Vietnam. I was the program manager for that prototype, and we're excited to talk about the results of that as well as the other opportunities to apply it to other areas. I work at Arizona State University, located in Phoenix, Arizona, in the southwestern part of the United States. We're known for the Grand Canyon. If you have a chance to visit, I'd love to show it to you. We also are famous for the large cactus and the Sonoran Desert. The university is in Phoenix, Arizona. It's a large urban area. We are a public research university, approximately 126,000 students, almost half of whom are online. We have 51,000 students who study entirely online. So we have a lot of experience delivering the traditional and the digital modality. Phoenix is a city of about 4.7 million people. And the most important thing about the university today is that we've been named #1 in innovation 5 years in a row in the United States. We've been applying the knowledge that we've developed and the lessons we've learned from our colleagues at other universities to implement at Arizona State. I want to talk about 5 transformational activities that are underway in educational technology, and then I'll look forward to getting your comments on these as well. I start out by talking about how the future is already here. We live in a world where in Korea and in the United States, we see many applications of future technologies. That technology is transforming learner expectations, not just the teaching capability, but the expectations of our students as well. That each learner has unique educational needs that the technology can meet. That students learn best by solving problems. This is something that the learning scientists have been telling us for years. And finally, I want to talk about how there's a shift in the instructor role from lecturer to leader. This is also important because earlier in the seminar, there was some discussion about the education workforce and doing training. The transformation isn't just technical, it's also in the teachers and how they use the technology and how it affects their teaching. So as we think about the future of technology, we want to keep in mind it will also transform the teaching requirements. So I talk about the future being already here. This is a famous quote from William Gibson. It's just not evenly distributed. And the interesting thing about that is we see in Korea excellent examples of the future of technology. In the United States, all the other examples. If you were alive in summer of 2016, you remember this game, Pokemon Go. It took over the world and captivated our attention because it brought artificial intelligence into a augmented reality model. And what we see is we see a tiny doorway into the future of educational technology. It's fascinating when you think about augmented reality. This is really the next step in educational technology. As we get more and more flexible tools, we will see how these kinds of technologies, which were simple games in 2016, turn into really powerful learning tools in the future. So as we think about educational technology, we always have to pay attention to opportunities to apply these kinds of tools to our needs and the needs of our students. So the learner expectation is transformed by those experiences also. We talk about this transformation occurring in every aspect of our life. Many of you probably owned CDs, and today we have millions of songs on our phone. I still have some old CDs, but I don't even think I have a CD player anymore. So as we think about this transformation from mass production to mass personalization, it's happening in entertainment, in transportation, in healthcare, where we used to have one treatment plan and now we have DNA analysis. One of the interesting early bits of data that was shared by the Chinese researchers was the DNA code for COVID-19. And that was really important because every other researcher in the world could use that code to help develop new solutions for this problem. So we're working very quickly from the mass production to mass personalization. And we often don't even realize how fast it's happening because it's happening all around us. But what about classrooms? We still use a mass production model. Up until the virus struck, we were delivering the same lesson to all students at the same time. This is a model that is 2,000 years old. So we haven't changed until recently when we started developing adaptive systems and other capabilities to deliver the right lesson to the right student at the right time. This is the future of education. This is what we did in Vietnam. This is what we have been doing at Arizona State University for the last 5 years. It's important that we think about the future opportunity in this way because our objective is to educate each student and help them be successful. And we heard that earlier from the other presenter when he talked about the personal realization of your best self. So how does this work in the model of having a unique education? In this case, we use adaptive systems like ALEX in Vietnam and at Arizona State University to deliver insight. The high-tech, high-touch model requires us to have data to deliver insight because the old model was a black box. This is our greatest challenge in education is we don't know how to answer very basic questions like who needs help, what do they need help with, what's the best way to help. If we can't answer those questions, then we're unable to teach the students. And what we're trying to do is deliver more data to provide insight to get to these questions as quickly as possible. So here's an example of a data set from one of our classes. This was a college algebra class. And what we have on the vertical axis is the lessons that the students were studying. There were 370 in ALEX. And on the horizontal axis, we have the dates from August to December. So that's one semester. The first thing I want to highlight is the system shows us that not all students start at the same place. Some students start with 0 topics mastered, and some start with 200. So if we try to teach all of those students the same lesson on the first day of class, we will have a terrible situation where the top student will be bored and the bottom student will be overwhelmed. So we're trying to figure out how to do this more effectively, and that's where the technology helps. because you can see this student went from 0 to hero. They were able to completely master all of the material, and the system shows us the work that they did along the way. Also, you see students that have come in very strong with their math knowledge and they complete the course early. So we have to change everything we do to respect and respond to that student's needs. We cannot make the student change to meet our system any longer. And finally, we run into students like this. This is the real reason why the technology has value. We are trying to find and help this student. Like any situation where you need data, whether you're a doctor or you're a teacher, if you don't have this information, you can't make a good decision. So the insight from the educational technology allows us to create the unique educational experience. And our goal is to see that every student succeeds. And it's worked well for us. In the 4 years since we started using Alex, we have increased the success rate in this class by 17 percentage points. This was really unprecedented for us because for 10 years we had tried other techniques and not had any success. So when we started using the high-tech, high-touch model, it changed the trajectory of the success of these students. And when I think about this, I look at the numbers and I think, if we had the same success rate in 2018 that we had in 2013, 1,000 less students would have passed this course. So that's 1,000 students that are now successfully moving on to calculus and other courses because they were able to pass. That's very important because we take that number and we expand to an entire country like Vietnam. And now we're talking about hundreds of thousands of students, or perhaps even millions of students who are able to successfully complete a math course. So in this model, we believe students learn best by solving problems, not just working on the technology, because we're in a battle for their attention. When you think about all of the distractions that they bring into the classroom today, they talk the telephone, they have their computer, they've got all of these things that are constantly distracting them. So we can't keep doing the same thing. Just adding computers to the classroom does not solve the problem of getting their attention. You know, we think about how we have continued to add technology to the lecture model, but the students are still distracted. And here's a case where one is looking at the pictures of their baby while the teacher is lecturing. We've been doing this for 2,000 years. Today, we're changing the model. This is the high touch version of that class. This is where the faculty members are working with the students in small groups, and the ability to interact changes the attention model. It creates much more engagement for the students. And they tell us that. They tell us that we want to use the time that we liberate from lectures when we put the digital material into the systems to do more important things like collaboration, communication, critical thinking, quantitative reasoning, creativity. In the new model, when we have the extra time in class, we're able to apply all of these lessons to more meaningful problems and help the students develop these professional skills. These are the skills that the Korean economy and the American economy need to continue to grow. So that's what we're doing. We're preparing those students for the future. Of course, the big shift, as we heard earlier, is in the role of the instructor. And I talk about this as being from lecturer to leader. This is an identity crisis right now. Many professors don't know how to behave in a problem-based educational model. So we have to help them make the transition, because the lecturing, as we know, When we were in school, we had the large whiteboards, and before that, there were the blackboards, and before that, there was the old lecture hall 100 years ago, and before that, 2,000 years ago, there were the Greeks. So we have 2,000 years of history that is based on lecture. And what we're trying to figure out is how do we help them become a better leader in the classroom? This is Dr. Susan Holacek, who's one of the professors who's made that transformation. She doesn't lecture anymore in class. All of the class time is working in small groups with the students to solve problems. So she is the model for the future of leaders in the teaching profession. And what did she do? Well, first she configured the adaptive system. This is really important because that's the core where all of the digital content resides. And then she created that content. She monitors the student learning using the data from the system, provides individual instruction. That's very important because just like the college algebra class, she can see in her class how the students are doing and she can respond individually. And then she's designing and leading all of those problems in the classroom. So it's not that we don't need the instructors, it's that we need a new type of instructor. And that's a transformation that's going to occur over the next 10 to 15 years. As the technology gets better and better, the teachers are going to have to transform. When the COVID-19 crisis is over, what I expect to happen is we can transition away from lectures because we will have recorded all of our lectures during this crisis. And when we go back in the classroom, let's take problem-based learning back into that room instead of the old lecture model. So that's the opportunity, because the best way to predict the future is to invent it. And this is an opportunity right now, at this moment in time, to invent the future of teaching and learning. We have the technology, we have the pedagogy, we have the professionals and our professors who can make this transition. So we have to capture their imagination and help them do that. So thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to the discussion with the panelists.
Thank you. Thank you for your inspiring presentation. Now let us turn to the panel. South Korea has an emerging edtech industry with some very vibrant edtech companies. As Korea is the first country to introduce 5G network and is home to world-class smartphone producers. However, according to the OECD PISA results, Korea showed the lowest level of computer use in classroom, indicating very weak partnership between edtech companies and academia. Today, we are privileged to have three panelists from both the edtech industry and academia. Dr. Yong-sang Jo, CEO of Ice Cream Edu, Director Yujin Jang of Classing, and Professor Tae-young Chung at Yonsei University. Each discussion will have about 10 minutes, followed by a response from Director Dae Johnson, and then we'll have a second round of discussion with a few questions from the floor. So Dr. Yong-sang Jo, he is renowned, he was a renowned researcher in the field of Edtech, and now he is a very notable he's a leader in the Edtech industry. Please go ahead.
Hi, can you see my slide?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I'd like to pick two words for this panel discussion. One is adaptive learning, one part of the high tech, high touch. And I'd like to more emphasize the immersive experience in terms of the learning experience. We have to emphasize the learning experience according to your notable speech. You emphasize learners' high expectations caused from the technology's innovation. So, but however, prior to touch the problem, technology, we have to understand the problem, what kind of problem we have to solve using the tools. So I identified the three kind of problems, even though these problems are known very well. First thing is a one-size-fits-all. You mentioned in the classroom the legacy environment for teaching. According to Titan partners, anyone who has ever been in a classroom as a student or instructors know that not all students proceed at the same pace. They show us using the data, right? And second problem is the iron triangle in physical environment for quality, access, and cost. If you want to improve the quality, it means making the bigger balloon of quality, then easy to access and improving the access can be possible. However, the more high cost follows up this effort. In other words, if we'd like to restrict the cost, control the cost, it means reduce some cost, then probably quality of the educations and the opportunity of the easy to access to the educational opportunity might be damaged, right? So we have to break this iron triangle in physical environment using some kind of tool. How to do that? Let me introduce in later. The other problem is a balancing issue between hard skill and soft skill. You mentioned the critical thinking, the problem solving, communications. These kind of, I'd like to use a very marketing, I'm not sure that this is a marketing term or not, but I'd like to use a term, the soft skill, as known as interpersonal skills pertaining to communication, capability, the flexibility, leadership, and teamwork, and time management. In case of hard skill, quite frankly, this is very important right now as well. But hard skill can be teachable and measurable and announced as a degree certification and programming skills and proficiency of the languages and operations tool. This is part of the hard skill area. But however, the soft skill cannot be teachable. As you mentioned, the soft skill kind of things have to be cultivating through the practice, coaching, or mentoring. So how do we keep in this balancing in the young learners, those who will be the leader in the coming future? So I'd like to identify three kind of things in terms of the problem, and let's touch finding some solutions using Edtech. Firstly, why we have interest in the adaptive learning, Dale, you touched very wisely why adaptive learning should be focused in the current learning environment. Because adaptive learning enables to diagnose individual learners' weak point, you mentioned before, and provides appropriate intervention and improve the predictive learning outcomes through the effective personalized learning pathway, etc. But I'd like to add one thing, the fun and interesting resources. So basically, we have to prepare three kind of things to reach to adaptive learning stage. First one is resources. So many quantity, the massive volume of the learning resources pertaining to the fun. And the other thing is a curriculum, very, very specific granularity level of the curriculum, because we have to design the personalized pathway using the curriculum. And we have to design the knowledge space area to touch the specific domain knowledge. Also, analytics technology is a mandatory component, improving the efficiency of the learning and appropriate feedback and recommendation to target learners. You mentioned the unique unique learning needs have to be solved through the analytics. So the common set among resources, curricula, analytics, there is an adaptive learning area, I think. So let me add one thing more to adaptive learning, AI, artificial intelligence. Why I emphasize AI? Because AI can be improved, the repetitive task and conversation among stakeholders, and improving the predictive capabilities rather than statistic data set, and helpful for high touch regarding intelligent decision making, and improve the personalizations in terms of the one-to-one coaching, mentoring through the personalized learning pathway. AI and change the interface, natural user interface and natural user experience. So AI assistants can be virtual assistant to guide on the personalized learning pathway. So briefly touch, this is a function tree of the AI, and I pointed some features how education domain can use this AI for educational purpose, something like that. The machine learning improve the predictions for learning outcomes and identify the at-risk population, something like that. So through the machine learning, natural language processing for language education, and expert system, the subject consulting, the career and university admission consulting, something like that, and planning and optimization, the improved learning resources and service, something like that. So in case of robotics, can be useful in the education domain as well. Let me briefly introduce a case study. My company is a case study, actually. Let's start the learning activities scheduled individually, assign the resources and assessment to specific learners through massive resources and immersive content, through diverse learning event. Actually, we use the IMS Caliper analytics as same as ASU and LX. So session, session means when students log in and log out, and how many times spent in the learning pathway, and how long to take the assessment test and assessment item. How long stay in assessment item can give us some insight to decide what's the next resources accordingly. A grading event, assignable event, media consumptions, the navigation pathway, order of the view of the resources, what kind of tools used on the pathway, personalized learning environment, and we add something, what kind of keywords they used, and how much compensations they get through the learning effort. This is a motivation to improve the engagement and learning environment. So start from this kind of personalized learning activities, then we touch the analytics from the data capture. So I'd like to say the capture context rather than capture data, because data log, the transaction result in a database may cause some noise on how to capture appropriate context. So we start from the capture the context. That is a starting point to provide the adaptive learning. So we use the IMS Caliper data standard to capture the appropriate context, and storing in data lake and cleaning context, and store in the next stage in terms of data map to making data set. This is a labeled data for AI, actually, so without noise, improving the efficiency. And then toss this data set to the system. This kind of things, one part of the dashboard for tutors, and the data set calculated by AI using the machine learning like Alexa. So we reasoning what is a weak point and what kind of problem for the habit during the learning process. So not only record, but also habit using reasoning on machine learning environment. And then generate the feedback message and recommendations. This is a dashboard for tutors as well. So all kind of messages are generated by the system using the data. So this is not generated by made by human tutors. This is generated by system using the data. I believe this is a high tech. So this high tech result can be tools for the high touch. Let me introduce how use that high touch. Once complete this kind of analyzing and reasoning, then we decide what is the appropriate stage for the next. So actually, we adjust the next stage. For instance, students meet the situation to increase the computational skills. I think this is a different problem. Knowing the calculations and improve the skill, the calculations. I think this is a different problem. Even though students understand how calculate the problem, but he meets some challenges, poor level of the skill. So he or she have to improve the speed and skills for the computational problem. Then we decide what is appropriate resource type. So we decide to provide some games. As you can see in below the game interface, or some kind of arcade game or card game or challenging time, provide the time limitations, and then we provide the assessment items, and then we provide the leaderboard in terms of the dashboard pertaining to ranking with the peer groups. So this is a very good motivations, and we see very incredible records improving the learning outcome through this kind of gamifications to improving computational skill. So this kind of system is very, very similar with Alexa, because we use the knowledge space, and we use the analytics, and we provide a personalized learning pathway. Something like gamifications environment, because we touched a very, very young student. Finally, we share the report with stakeholders, learner, parent, and tutors. We provide a different format and different report type per stakeholders. Learner, more easier. Parent, compact information. For tutor, very, very specific and very, very deep level of the message. So this is one kind of case study. How do we use high tech in terms of the adaptive learning as well as AI, and how do we support high touch led by tutors and supported by parents? So this is my opinion for this today's topic. Thank you.
Thank you. That was very interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you, CEO Joe. Can I have a quick question?
Yeah.
Your business model is mainly for students and also assisted by private tutors, right?
Yeah.
So can you also provide a similar service to teachers so that teachers can play the similar role as private tutors?
Yeah, absolutely. Because the system can be adjustable to appropriate stakeholders, because the data is just a tool. So how do we aggregate and organize this kind of tool for specific purpose? So it is up to the purpose, and it's up to the stakeholders type. Okay. Yeah, there are many different kind of dashboards used in globally. Not only my company, but also ASU. In my understanding, ASU already used different types of dashboard per stakeholders.
Okay, thank you very much. So we turn to the director, Zhang Yujin, please.
Everyone, thank you for inviting me here. I'm here to represent Classing today. And thank you to doctors for your inspiring speeches. Classing, let me briefly introduce what Classing is first. So Classing is a social platform that is used in schools where teachers invite students and parents to have a safe online space and communicate in it. Today we're talking about how Edtech is changing the education. Well, we all know that technology itself is not the only reason that's changing the education. The way we learn is changing, the students are changing every year, and the technology is developing at an unprecedented speed. And now with the virus pandemic situation, we are facing the most unexpected situations at schools. And in this situation, it's very hard for us to keep our heads cool. I can easily imagine as a tech company member that all of us are just having the daily struggle to keep up with all the new tech trends and to adapt to the newest situations. But here, what we would like to always keep in mind is this: where does an education platform stand? So I would like to talk about the philosophy of it behind the educational platform, not because I'm intimidated by two doctors' academic expertise, but because I really think that the philosophy is important. Of course, as an edtech company, our biggest role includes trying to locate and find where the pain points are at schools and provide solutions for them to solve their problems using technology. But I'm going to talk about how we're doing it in a later stage, but first I'd like to mention why we're doing it and why we think it's important. So all of our services on Classing are designed and developed to empower teachers, because we know that technology cannot replace teachers. The goal is to digitalize and automate the simple and repetitive parts of the education and the teachers' jobs so that we can give them back the free time, give them the freedom back so that they can spend time on actually teaching the students. Their actual jobs would be teaching creativity, promoting collaboration skills, and responding to each and every student's emotional needs. Classing is also responding to the recent outbreak of COVID-19, but with this exact philosophy. We know that the society has been moving towards where the sense of physical space is getting blurred, but I think the situation with the COVID-19 has made everyone at school, including teachers and students and even parents, to jump right into an unexpected situation where they're not properly prepared. In fact, Classing has been offering an alternative to physical classrooms for years. As I mentioned at the beginning briefly, it is an online space where teachers create a safe, contained online classroom, invite students and parents to communicate. But on top of that, what they can do right now in these difficult times is they operate a distance learning in the system. So right now, almost 90% of all K-12 schools in Korea are using Classing. And teachers are assigning homeworks on the platform, and students can submit on it, and the system will collect, analyze, and give them the visualized results as a dashboard so teachers can provide real-time feedback to the students. And for the students who are bored to death at home right now, desperately wanting to go back to school, we're offering Classing AI. It is an AI-based learning system where students can learn the concepts by watching educational videos. And then the system will then recommend them the right level of question items so that they can have more accurate assessments. And what we've tried to do in here is to incorporate small elements of games so students can have fun while learning. Because we think it's important to continue with the self-directed study that they have positive achievement experiences. And what else I think I'm pushing something wrong, sorry. Let me go back quickly. Yeah. And then what we put a lot of thought to as well is the teaching experience while using AI. It is not only the students who can use this, but also the teachers. So they can have an overview of the whole classroom on their dashboards, see who needs help with which questions, also track which students spend more time for a specific question, and they can provide differentiated instruction with the help of AI. And as a social contribution, we are offering this service to all schools in Korea for a month for free. The other big issue that we hear a lot from the teachers is the excessive amount of administrative work that they have at schools. They're so overwhelmed by it, it's hard for them to focus on their actual job, which is teaching. Even one of the teachers on Classing said they have to make time to teach the children. So we came up with this system called mobile school forms, which saves 90% of the time that's taken in partially doing the administrative work. It just takes a few clicks to create and send, collect, analyze, and report. The system will do it all for you. So as of now, 10,000 schools are with us on Classing, but we think it's only a small fraction of what is to come. And whatever the new novel technology is waiting us in the future, we will continue to have this philosophy behind anything that we choose, and we will continue to empower teachers, help students, and engage families in the education. Thank you, and stay safe.
Thank you, Ms. Chan. And now we turn to Professor Tae-Hong. He is professor at Yonsei University, but he also serves for Education Commission as a director for Global Partnership. So, please.
Thank you, Professor Lee. I can just repeat. Okay. Well, since I'm a lady professor, I don't make the education thing, so I just make a couple of points. Well, actually, I'm not an expert on education field, and while I'm working together with him, I'm an early learner or beginner of learning this high-touch, high-tech programs and issues. So as a beginner, I just make a couple of point observation that the first of all, the current education system or paradigm or program, whatever we call, very much supply-driven system. Supply means either school system or teachers or whoever providing the education. And it's a hybrid of national value and global values. So it's a very difficult animal to deal with. That's my first observation. But most of all, I think the current education system in general is very much supply-driven. And then why it's very difficult even if we all know that high tech, the options and the solutions are available. But my observation is this one, since this is not just application of one technology, as Ms. Zhang said, and also Dr. Zhou mentions, high touch part is very much mingled with the social system. So why I say this education is global and the national or local values are entwined, that part to make us very much difficult to just apply this high-tech solution. Second part is, as Dr. Johnson the highlight, maybe our curriculum, if we see the formal education, primary or the higher education curriculums, some subjects, some topics are very easy to tackle from the global solutions, technology-based solutions. For example, you mentioned calculus, algebra, and so on. Those topics should be done, whether you are in US or Korea or Vietnam, or some natural science topics like chemistry, biology, maybe. But some social related or national value related topics, ethics and culture, history, is a very much difficult topic to make such global standardized the programs. I think that's why these two different values are difficult to tackle. And the second point is most so far successful cases you, Dr. Johnson shows us and Dr. Zhou shows us are very much technology-driven solutions and very much globalized topics. So our next challenge is how to really develop the new overall comprehensive integrated ecosystems in education field, which is really highlighted by the former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon during his keynote speech. So the second part I want to highlight is this one. As I said, the high-tech part is more appealing to many the stakeholders in this field. Especially as an economist, I think my interpretation is a little bit different. If you apply this AI solution or clustering platforms and so on, for me, the marginal cost of applying this system is not that high, almost zero or very low. That's why we can apply this one to many different countries or systems. But high touch part, I think also Dr. Zhou mentioned, high touch part requires a little bit more. And in my opinion, I call it social inertia. Why that high touch part is difficult? The existing current the ecosystem in education systems are there. So we have to break out that one, or we have to convince them to join us. That part requires a lot more than what we expected, because it means the system, institutions, legal arrangement, and so on. So we have to change, and that takes time. So we should be patient, and rather than excluding them, because if we exclude and then saying that high tech part is really good and very cost effective and so on and so forth, so that we have to replace this system, that means from the existing ecosystem partners or stakeholders, that means, oh, wait a minute, I lose my job. Mm-hmm. So I think how to incorporate them, how to include them, and then working together, that's a real challenge in high touch part. I think that's my second observation. So in conclusion, as Mr. Ban said during his keynote speech, he highlighted the two components. One is innovation and the other one is partnership. So obviously, if we push this high touch, high tech program or initiative, I'm sure that there are gaps between this technological capacity and the institutional arrangement in the education area. So our real challenge is how to, fill this gap. And finally, I fully agree with Dr. Johnson that in his presentation, especially the point 3, you said that the students have a unique education need. That means in this 21st educational system requires demand-driven system rather than the supply-driven system. So demanders are students. So how to provide this one is really to fill the gap between this technology innovation and this the institutional arrangement. So our big challenge is that part, and as Ms. John said during her presentation, after this COVID-19 situation is somehow settled down, I hope in the near future, then each country or each educational authority, university, each education-related agencies, whether they like it or not, should face very seriously this non-face-to-face educational option. And how they're going to handle this issue effectively will be the winner of our new educational system. So from that point of view, today I learned a lot, and that's my point. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, three discussants, for your excellent discussion. So we'll get back to Director David Johnson for his response, please.
Those are 3 wonderful presentations. I would start by saying that what we're searching for now is inspiration for the teachers to change. As we just heard, there is a lot of social inertia that will prevent the transformation of the teaching profession. And without inspiration, they'll never change. So as we think about the work for the ice cream and the plastic companies, those are going to provide good stories to inspire teachers to change. The biggest challenge in Vietnam and in America and probably in Korea is changing the teacher's perspective on the value of technology. We have to begin to influence them, and to go back to something that was said earlier, to change the philosophy of what the teacher does. This is an interesting dilemma because the change actually happened 20 years ago when the availability of Wi-Fi and the Google search engine and all of the social platforms exploded into our social structure, changing all of the components except for education. So now the pressure on education is building. And COVID-19 is actually a huge opportunity because the pressure now is entirely focused on how do we deliver education online. And that unique moment could create the inspiration to change what we've done. I think what we have to guard against is what I think is the stress and the frustration that are going to follow this crisis. Teachers are going to feel completely worn out and are going to feel demoralized. We need to think about how do we help them heal after this crisis, and how do we help them rebuild their identity. They're going to think that they have been personally attacked by this transformation to go online. And many of them are confused and frustrated and stressed out. So the challenge for us as leaders and for the technologies is to provide them with a safe and soft place to land. So Classting is a safe place for them to try online learning, and Ice Cream is a safe place for them to develop and use the technology. So that's something that I think is very important, and I'm hoping that leaders in Korea are starting to think about this, because that's the most advanced educational system in the world in South Korea, and you have the most experience with transformation and change. So if you have the right leadership in place, I'm hopeful that you'll be able to adopt this new philosophy of personalization at scale, focus on problem-based learning, develop professional skills that are going to help the Korean society and the economy continue to grow.
We have a second round of discussion, starting with a question from the floor. The question is, the COVID-19 crisis could be turned into an opportunity for embracing Edtech in education. It's already mentioned by you. And could you share with us how ASU has been coping with this COVID-19 crisis? So maybe we can share each individual case with the organizations, how you actually contribute to national efforts to coping with this crisis. I heard that the casting and also the ice cream has been making contribution to this national effort. Right? So please, can you share your experience?
We'd like to try so many diverse efforts to support and overcome this COVID-19 pandemic situation in Korea. Firstly, we opened some learning resources to public. Anyone can access freely to use our resources in online, as well as we provide our educational dedicated device and content, namely Ice Cream Home Learn service to lower level, lower income families and some families, those who have difficulties due to the COVID-19 damage. Also, we provide some dedicated device and content to Korean school located in China freely without no cost. Also, we daily care service for all learners because they cannot participate in school life. So we daily care more specifically touch the intervention and provide specific level of the learning resources and encourage their engagement skills and share their ideas and encourage their message to Korea, the adult society. So they making some sentence and share to parents and society. So many kind of efforts we try to overcome this COVID-19. One interesting thing is through this kind of experience, even though they are very young learner, they are very growing well their thinking and see this problem. So through this kind of digital literacy, they understand how they do share their message and think, and how they use the resources and how they reflect their learning outcome through this kind of ICT environment in terms of the adaptive learning, as well as a personalized pathway. So I believe this kind of experience can be impact to their literacy, digital literacy, namely as AI literacy may be required, because they provided by AI system, generated by message and some coachings led by AI system, even though tutors using the high touch. So through kind of things and experience, they understand, oh, this is AI. So okay, I can use this AI more effectively to solve my time limitations. So I believe this kind of unexpected and very sad situation, but in other words, for very young learners, obviously this kind of difficulties provide to their good opportunity to grow well
Okay.
for coming.
Thank you. So Ms. Zhang, what about the classing?
Classing has been already a free service since we established. And the only service that is not free is Classing AI. And we decided to provide this premium service for all schools in Korea for a month, which is during the closure. And already 2,000 schools have applied, and more than tens of thousands of licenses have been issued for the students. And what else we're trying to do is to help the teachers who are close with us, who act as evangelists of Edtech. So they come up and then they start using the technology first, before any teachers who are relatively reluctant to start anything new. So, and then they make materials, they make videos of how to use it, the tutorials of how to use Classing, how to use Zoom or Cisco events. And then we try to distribute those information to other teachers so that they can slowly open up to new technologies. One of the things that inspired us a lot was that there's a student in one of the teachers' class who uses Classing as an online distance learning platform, said, I really love online classroom because it's like going to school. And we thought it was really interesting because not going to the class, not being able to go to school, we thought it would discourage the students a lot. But online learning and distance learning is pretty well received among the students, as we perceive.
Thank you. So maybe we have to ask Director Dale Johnson about ASU. I mean, ASU has been regarded the most innovative university in the United States. And we really want to learn from ASU experience, how you can cope with the coronavirus pandemic through innovations.
We have been preparing for COVID-19 for 10 years, and we didn't know it. And I think that the same is true for the companies today. You know, we've all been working in the future frontier, developing the infrastructure for this very moment. We didn't know it was going to be so bad, but if I look at the growth of Arizona State University over the last 10 years, almost all of our growth has been online. As you saw at the beginning of my presentation, we have 50,000 students online. They never come to campus. They do all of their learning and their communication and their collaboration online. They're taking classes from everywhere in the world, from Korea to, to France. And what we've done is we have used that as a means to develop the capacity to deal with COVID-19. When our president said we were going to shut down all of our classes, the entire university went into action to convert the other 75,000 students into online students in 1 week. You can't do that unless you build capacity. And that's what we've been doing. So as I think about the response to this crisis, for the future, what we need to do is we need to retain that capacity. For universities that are going through this for the first time, they need to build the skills in their staff and in their faculty to continue to do this. It's not going to go back to the old way. There's going to be some movement towards more digital instruction. So this is an opportunity to build that capacity. Unfortunately, I think the stress of the moment will cause most of those organizations to lose that capacity, because there's going to be a lot of people who get burnt out, and they're going to want to leave the university, or they're going to change jobs. So we have to find a way to protect that knowledge and to use it again in the future. And I think that's a challenge for the entire nation of South Korea. You know, how do you capture this opportunity to start the conversation about transformation? There is no reason to lecture anymore. That is an antiquated approach from the 20th century that we should abandon. The 21st century is a digital century. We put all of our instructional resources online, and then we spend our class time doing more meaningful skills development. So this is the same statement that we've heard from every one of the participants today in this panel. And I think we all realize we have to tell the rest of the world, stop lecturing and start learning.
Universities,
Well,
we are prepared.
Actually, we are not prepared, and we are in a process of learning by doing. Well, as you know, the COVID-19 was spread here in Korea. At that time, the Korean universities and educations are all in winter break. So we are not really ready, but once it becomes serious, and education ministry and the school decide to postpone our the semester 2 weeks later, we're going to do it, and then still the situation is not improved, so that they suddenly decide, okay, not face to face, okay, online based the education, at least for the universities. So the crazy part is for the school admin plus professors, the suppliers who are not really ready to prepare this. So now, actually, last week we started this online-based the class. But as Dr. Johnson said, we frankly here in Korean universities, professors are still lecturer, even if we are doing the online rather than the leader, as you pointed out. So probably after this COVID situation is settled down, I'm 100% sure that our school leaders and our education ministry leaders, they're going to talk about how to reshape our the teaching practice. So whether we like it or not, I'm sure that some of the professors, including myself, try to do our best from the lecturer to leader on in many ways. So as I said, it's a learning by doing process, but as you can see, the Korea is a fast learner, so I'm sure that our system will quickly adapt to this new system.
So I want to give you 3 inspirations to think about for this transformation, so that as the leaders begin to embrace this transformation, they have a vision. The first is medical education. Medical education made the change 100 years ago when they went to case methodology and the diagnosis approach to education. Then came the law schools, again, using case methodology, and then the business schools. So if we think about education, the most complex education, medical education, is already in the future. So is legal and business. Those are the 3 most critical types of professional degrees. And then we start to do the others. Now we need to bring it all the way down to the very first year of university. So there is an inspiration there. We just have to embrace it and say we can do it down to first year of university and eventually down to first year of primary school.
move on to another issue that actually the Professor Chung raised. It's about the possibility of building global ecosystem for high-touch high-tech learning. I mean,
Yeah.
the thing I have been really grateful to really active role of Director Dave Johnson in Vietnam project. But we have a lot of challenges, right? It's success for prototype schools, but we have a big challenge ahead of us when we do the similar project for 30, 50 schools in Vietnam. And Professor Chung correctly pointed out the difficulties of implementing high-touch high-tech into different countries with different cultures, different curriculums, different teacher practices, and so forth. So he really emphasized the difficulty of high-touch part. It really been dependent on the different context of different schools, different regions, and different countries. So ASU has been very successful in combining high-tech with high-touch, and you have been also very active in Vietnam project. And what do you think? What could be the next step for building a global ecosystem for high-touch high-tech learning?
So I want to talk about that ecosystem as a platform. And I want to use that term very clearly. When we think about the social networks, Facebook, Instagram, I want to say the one in China, I can't remember the name now, but all of these social networks are platforms for sharing information, peer-to-peer sharing. So I go back to the comment about social inertia. When we have a system that is preventing the sharing of knowledge, then a platform, a technology, can open that system up. And that's what we're missing. And this is where I have to be critical of Ice Cream and Classing and others, this Alex. They're not open the way that a social network is open. I call this scholar sourcing. What we want to do is we want to get all of the scholars from all of the universities in Korea to participate in an educational ecosystem that allows them to share their knowledge and be rewarded for it. So when you build that infrastructure, and I think this is a national program, I don't think this is a private company kind of, independent type of thing. This is a program that encourages that sharing and compensates the scholars for their contributions. That type of technology, that social network, will help to transform the inertia, will break down the barriers, and will open up all of these opportunities. So that's a huge milestone. In Vietnam, we're talking about possibly using the Alex technology not only for student education, but for teacher training also. So we start to bring all of these opportunities together in one platform. That's something that no one has done yet. Now, there are small examples of opportunities like Canvas Commons, and in the United States, we have OpenStax is a collaborative textbook development system. There's also Merlot, which is a network of collaboration through the California University system. All of those are what I think of as prototypes for what we eventually need, which is a new educational ecosystem. And if Korea takes the lead, I think other nations will follow, because you have demonstrated for the last 70 years that education is the key to economic development. And you've transformed your society from agrarian to industrial to post-industrial in 3 generations, which is unprecedented. So I think about Korea as being the leader in the global education market and using the social cohesion and the unified focus on education, the value that you place on that, all presents a unique opportunity. In the United States, we don't have that same social cohesion. There's no universal agreement that education is a benefit for the individual or the economy. Now, that may sound crazy, but that unfortunately reflects our culture of individualism. So I think about how can we find an exemplar in the world? And I look to Korea. Vietnam aspires to be like Korea educationally. So Vietnam is looking for opportunities like this. This may be a transformative technology which takes a country like Vietnam and propels them into the same level as Korea or Japan or China. You know, we need game-changing technologies like this because the old model of placing more and more teachers in more and more classrooms does not scale. And that's where we get into social problems because you end up with rich cities and poor countryside and inequalities in education. All of that is a product of the old model. So when we look for an ecosystem, we're thinking about transforming all of that educational experience.
For your encouragement and compliment for South Korea. And I can see the vice director from Southern New Hampshire University, Kat Flynn, in the screen, and nodding her head. So maybe I can, although it's a certain invitation, but maybe I can invite Ms. Kat Flynn about this, about her thoughts about this issue. Do you have something to talk about?
Kat, you'll need to turn on your audio. We still can't hear you.
I think this might work.
Yeah.
Hello, wonderful to be speaking with you all today. Yes, I'm glad to chime in with my perspective on establishing a future learning ecosystem that's cohesive and mindful of the future learners' needs. I think I would echo a lot of the points that Dale and others in the panel have already made, that it's really all about thinking about what are the individual learners' needs, right? Every learner's needs are a little different, but we also have to approach the experience with the learner in perspective. So thinking about something that is cohesive, that is seamless to navigate, that knits together all the discrete parts into something that the learner doesn't even have to think about for ease of use, and they can focus their cognitive energy on the learning process.
I would add to that, Singapore is already trying to do this. If you want to look at another society that's got the same vision, I came across a group. In fact, when I was in Busan last year, I spoke at the ASEAN conference, and the team from Singapore contacted me and told me, we are trying to do this for lifelong learning. We don't just have a vision of transforming primary, secondary, or tertiary education. We want to make this a continuum, as Kat was describing it, an integrated ecosystem for lifelong learning. So in Singapore, you have another tiny laboratory of exciting, innovative people who are trying to do the same thing.
As Professor Chung already mentioned, Korean teachers and professors are not really ready for this change. We have a survey about the use of online technology in lecture for professors, and only 1% responded they had an experience. But in US, I heard that maybe more than 50% professors already had an experience in online learning.
Yeah.
Maybe the two universities, I mean the ASU or the Southern New Hampshire University, maybe most of the professors had already enough experience. Maybe they can serve as a platform to further develop their skills. Maybe spurred by this coronavirus pandemic. So maybe you can easily turn this into an opportunity. But I'm really concerned that we have some backfires from because of the lack of experience and lack of enough preparation. Maybe the sudden increase in online lecture, the imposed by the outside, the unexpected coronavirus could actually backfire the change. So I have some concerns. What do you think? Maybe Professor Chen?
Well, I think that especially the suppliers, I think the demand side is ready. But since I'm an economist, I'm going to give you this example. When we say market, for 100 years, we said market is a physical place where we could exchange, buy and sell our goods and services. Same thing, in this education area, the demanders are ready to buy education service at the virtual space, but the suppliers are not ready. Still, they are insisting the physical place, the classroom, lecture room. So, since the other practice, online shopping, for example, the Alibaba, Amazon, and so on are so quick to be adapted by two players, two sides, demanders and suppliers. So it's a matter of time, but in Korea, as Dr. Lee said, I'm sure that we're going to have a backfire because we are not ready, and it's just less than 1 month's experience to most of professors and teachers here in Korea. But when we recall back and they evaluate, what we have done, I'm sure that we're going to include this option. But I think that's the role of the leaders in this area. And we're going to put this one as one of the agenda for improving our education system. Then we're going to catch up, and obviously we have to learn.
Yeah. So, Vice Director Kathleen, I heard that Southern New Hampshire University has also big online learning students, and you have had a big success in this area. And how do you regard this coronavirus pandemic crisis? Do you really think it's an opportunity for your university?
I think the current moment is bringing to bear a lot about online learning in the public consciousness. I think it's an opportunity for the world at large really to think about online education and online education quality, and think about how do we create quality online learning experiences. I think given the context of the situation, many had to transition to an online learning environment quite rapidly. And what we're doing right now in a lot of K-12 institutions that are not primarily online, and a lot of traditional universities that are not primarily online, might be remote learning in a sense, not quite online learning in the sense that it's a designed online course. So I think it'll bring a lot of consciousness to quality online learning and teaching, and it'll be a great opportunity for the world to convene in a discussion about that.
So maybe before, maybe please say.
One of the things that's been very interesting here is, and Kat just used this term, remote learning. In the online learning community, everyone is very, very carefully segregating this experience so that they don't have the negative backlash that you asked about. They want people to see this as something different. And it is. So language is really important. And everyone in the profession in this area is saying remote learning as part of this challenge.
So any final thought and comment from the discussion?
Let me share with my experience. Probably 8 years ago, year 2012, World Economic Forum touched the issue of what kind of benefit for specific stakeholders through private sector, public sector, and individual sector to establish the data ecosystem. So what is the benefit for specific stakeholders group? There is a starting point to establish the ecosystem. Likewise, we face a very similar challenge. How do we establish the ecosystem, high-tech, high-touch? So we have to identify what kind of benefit to encourage the engagement to this ecosystem for specific stakeholders. And in case of K-12 in Korea, the teachers are very well trained to use ICT, their teaching activity, and encourage the learning activity for their students. Thanks to well teacher training program, connected with private sector. So as well as affordability, how much use this kind of high tech with lower cost. We have to reach to solve the affordability. It means appropriate technologies we need to use and spread out an ecosystem. For example, there you experience in Vietnam, and we have our own curriculum. Vietnam has their own curriculum. The US have over 50, including Common Core, 51 curriculum standard you have, right? So how do we map leveling, just the leveling through the learning pathway? There is a technology area based on the humans' experience. So how do we reach this issue, high-touch issue, through the affordability regarding the high-tech? So we have to think about this kind of benefit for specific stakeholders as well as affordability.
Okay. Any other? Okay, maybe I can ask a final thought or remarks by David also.
I'd say that tvchosun has done a great job of pulling together some very, very brilliant people, and hopefully this information will get distributed to others in the policy debate, because the questions about social inertia and philosophy and platform technology are public policy issues as much as they are education and technology issues. So we have to engage policymakers, the thought leaders in government and in industry, to encourage them to start to use their influence to engage the other stakeholders. The ultimate goal is to continue to improve the educational outcomes in Korea. And I think that with that in mind, everyone should be motivated and inspired to focus on helping the students succeed.
This concludes session 2. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.